The one part of yourself you've spent years trying to hide is the very thing holding your greatest power captive. Pause for a moment and let that thought settle somewhere deeper than logic. Because if everything you've believed about yourself is only half the story, then perhaps the life you've been trying so desperately to fix has never actually been broken. What if the anger you keep apologizing for is not proof that you are dangerous, but proof that something inside you has been waiting to protect you? What if the sensitivity you've called weakness is actually a perception so sharp that the world taught you to dull it? What if your jealousy has been pointing toward an unlived dream, your stubbornness toward an abandoned identity, your anxiety toward instincts you've ignored for years? Most people spend their entire lives trying to become acceptable. Very few ever become whole. And the distance between those two lives is where your shadow waits. Not as a monster, not as an enemy, but as an abandoned child carrying the map to everything you've been searching for. Close your eyes for just a second if you can. Imagine walking through a forgotten hallway inside your own mind. Dust floats in the air. Every door has your name written on it. Some doors are locked. Others have been nailed shut for decades. Behind each one lives a version of yourself you decided was unacceptable. The child who screamed too loudly, the teenager who loved too deeply, the adult who wanted more than permission allowed. You didn't kill these parts, you buried them. And buried things have a strange habit. They continue growing in the dark. This is one of the deepest psychological truths ever discovered. The human mind does not erase what it rejects. It only hides it from awareness. And hidden energy never disappears. It waits. Sometimes it waits as anxiety, sometimes as unexplained exhaustion, sometimes as endless overthinking, sometimes as the strange feeling that no matter how successful you become, someone else is living your life. Perhaps you've felt that. Perhaps you've smiled while secretly feeling empty. Perhaps you've been admired while quietly feeling invisible. Perhaps you've become everything everyone wanted, except yourself. Notice how your body responds to those words, because your body remembers truths your conscious mind has forgotten. Think about your childhood, not the photographs, not the stories your family repeats every holiday. Think about the invisible rules. Every family has them. Don't cry. Don't be angry. Don't argue. Don't attract attention. Don't disappoint people. Be nice. Be grateful. Be quiet. Be useful. Be perfect. Each rule seems harmless, until you realize every don't required sacrificing a piece of yourself. Children are remarkable psychologists. Long before they understand language, they understand survival. They notice that certain emotions receive smiles, others receive silence, some receive punishment, and so the unconscious begins making impossible calculations. If expressing anger loses love, then anger must disappear. If confidence makes others uncomfortable, then confidence becomes dangerous. If curiosity embarrasses adults, then curiosity becomes shame. The child does not consciously choose this. The nervous system chooses it, because belonging always feels more important than authenticity, at least in the beginning. Imagine carrying a magnificent sword through life, but every time you reached for it, someone slapped your hand. Eventually you stop reaching. Years later you forget you ever carried one. That is the shadow. Not evil, forgotten ability, not darkness, unclaimed light, not destruction, compressed life force. Society often praises people who appear calm. But have you ever wondered why so many calm people secretly feel lifeless? Because calmness is not peace. Sometimes calmness is paralysis wearing good manners. We celebrate people who never complain, yet we rarely ask what happened to every word they swallowed. We admire those who never make anyone uncomfortable, yet we ignore the cost of becoming emotionally invisible. Every suppressed instinct requires energy. Imagine trying to hold a beach ball underwater. At first it seems manageable, but minute after minute your muscles tighten, your breathing changes, your attention narrows. You become exhausted without understanding why. Now imagine doing that with anger, with desire, with ambition, with grief, with joy, with sexuality, with creativity, with the wild, instinctive intelligence your ancestors depended upon for survival. Every day, for years. No wonder so many people wake up tired before the day even begins. Their exhaustion isn't from work, it's from performing someone else's version of themselves. Think carefully about that. How much energy does it take to constantly monitor your words, your facial expressions, your opinions, your dreams, your laughter, your emotions, just to make sure nobody rejects you? This performance becomes so automatic that eventually you mistake it for your personality. But personality is often only the costume. Identity lies underneath. And beneath identity, something older still. There is a version of you untouched by approval, untouched by social media, untouched by comparison, untouched by the fear of disappointing people. It has been waiting patiently, not demanding attention, simply waiting until the pain of pretending becomes greater than the fear of remembering. Perhaps that moment is arriving now. Perhaps that's why you're here, because something inside you is tired, not physically, existentially, tired of editing every sentence, tired of doubting every instinct, tired of seeking permission to exist. There is a reason certain people trigger you so intensely. The arrogant colleague, the fearless artist, the outspoken stranger, the person who never apologizes for taking up space. Notice how quickly judgment appears. They're selfish. They're too emotional. They're unrealistic. They're attention seekers. Maybe, or maybe something far more interesting is happening. The unconscious often criticizes in others what it secretly longs to reclaim within itself. The qualities you reject outside yourself may be standing guard over qualities you've abandoned inside yourself. The woman who irritates you because she refuses to shrink herself. Could she be reminding you of your forgotten confidence? The man whose ambition feels excessive. Could he be awakening the hunger you've spent years suppressing? The friend whose emotional honesty makes you uncomfortable. Could they simply be expressing feelings you've been trained to imprison? Every powerful emotional reaction deserves investigation. Because emotion points toward hidden meaning. The shadow speaks in feelings before it ever speaks in words, and yet we misunderstand it. We've been taught to fear our darker emotions, suppress them, distract ourselves, stay positive, smile through everything. But emotions were never designed to be moral. They were designed to deliver information. Fear asks for awareness. Grief asks for love. Anger asks for boundaries. Jealousy asks difficult questions. Shame asks where your authenticity was traded for acceptance. None of these emotions are your enemy. Ignoring them is. Imagine a river blocked by enormous stones. The water cannot disappear. It simply changes behavior. It floods nearby fields. It erodes foundations. It creates pressure until eventually something breaks. Human psychology follows the same law. Blocked instinct becomes distorted instinct. Suppressed confidence becomes passive aggression. Suppressed love becomes obsession. Suppressed courage becomes resentment. Suppressed creativity becomes depression. Energy always finds expression. The question is whether it expresses itself consciously or unconsciously. This changes everything, because perhaps the traits you've spent years trying to eliminate are not mistakes. Perhaps they're messages arriving in the wrong language. Consider rage. From childhood, many people learn that anger is unacceptable. So they disconnect from it completely. They become endlessly agreeable, generous, patient, understanding. Everyone praises them. Yet secretly they feel walked over, invisible, unable to say no, unable to protect their own peace. What happened? The rage never vanished. It simply lost its voice. And when healthy anger disappears, healthy boundaries disappear with it. The same force capable of destruction is also capable of protection. Fire burns forests. Fire also keeps families alive through winter. The energy itself is neutral. Only consciousness determines its direction. Sensitivity follows the same pattern. Imagine a child who notices every shift in tone, every expression, every emotional current in a room. Adults may call that child too sensitive. But what if the child possesses extraordinary perception? Eventually, to survive criticism, they numb themselves. Years later, they wonder why life feels colorless. The gift was never sensitivity alone. The gift was perception. Only fear turned perception into suffering. There is hidden gold inside every rejected part of yourself. Not metaphorical gold, psychological gold. The very qualities capable of transforming your life often arrive wearing frightening masks. Confidence first appears as arrogance. Boundaries first appear as selfishness. Authenticity first appears as rebellion. Freedom first appears as loneliness. Growth first appears as loss. The unconscious wraps treasure in discomfort because only those willing to face discomfort become capable of carrying real power. Take a slow breath. Notice what thought entered your mind without invitation. Maybe someone's face appeared. Maybe a memory surfaced. Maybe an emotion quietly knocked on the door you've kept locked for years. Don't push it away. Simply notice. Because the moment you stop running from your shadow, something extraordinary begins to happen. Not outside you, inside. The prison door you've spent years pushing against begins to reveal something almost impossible to believe. It was never locked. It was never locked. You were simply taught never to touch the handle. That is how conditioning works. It rarely chains you with force. It whispers a story so many times that eventually you mistake the story for reality. You begin to believe that who you are is dangerous, inconvenient, too much, or somehow not enough. The tragedy is not that you believe it. The tragedy is that you begin organizing your entire life around protecting a lie. And the unconscious is patient. It will allow you to build careers, relationships, identities, and reputations upon that lie for years, sometimes for decades. But eventually something begins to crack. Perhaps it arrives as burnout, perhaps as a relationship that suddenly falls apart, perhaps as the strange feeling that success tastes emptier than failure ever did. Many people call this a crisis. The unconscious calls it an invitation, because the shadow does not appear when you are ready. It appears when pretending becomes too expensive. This is why periods of confusion often precede the greatest transformations of a human life. Everything you once relied upon begins to lose its certainty. The mask feels heavier. The applause sounds quieter. The goals no longer excite you. You wake in the morning asking a question you cannot explain. Whose life am I actually living? That question is dangerous. Not because it harms you, because it dissolves illusions. Most people quickly distract themselves before the answer arrives. They become busier. They consume more. They scroll longer. They fill every silence because silence has an uncomfortable habit. It introduces you to yourself. Listen carefully. Your shadow does not ask you to become someone new. It asks you to stop abandoning who you have always been. That distinction changes everything. Imagine an ancient tree growing deep within a forest. Year after year, someone trims its branches into the shape they prefer. Eventually, the tree begins growing according to expectation instead of instinct. It still survives. It even appears beautiful. But beneath the surface, every root remembers the original design. Human beings are no different. You can train behavior. You cannot erase essence. This is why something inside you refuses to die. No matter how many times life convinces you to settle, some quiet voice continues whispering, "There is more." That whisper is not arrogance, it is memory. Think about the dreams you dismissed because they seemed unrealistic, the conversations you never had because you feared rejection, the boundaries you never set because you feared abandonment, the talents you quietly buried because they attracted too much attention. None of those experiences disappeared. They became psychological pressure. Pressure always seeks release. Sometimes it becomes anxiety, sometimes addiction, sometimes perfectionism, sometimes endless people-pleasing. Look closely at perfectionism. It disguises itself as excellence, but often it is fear wearing expensive clothes. The perfectionist does not fear making mistakes. They fear losing love. So every achievement becomes another attempt to earn what should never have required earning. Acceptance. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine creating because you are alive, speaking because your voice matters, resting because your worth does not fluctuate with productivity, loving without negotiating your identity. That is not laziness. That is integration. Integration is one of the most misunderstood ideas in psychology. People think becoming whole means removing darkness. It means welcoming it into consciousness. A wolf does not become safe because it disappears. It becomes safe because it is understood. Within you lives tenderness. Within you also lives ferocity. One without the other creates imbalance. Tenderness without strength becomes self-sacrifice. Strength without tenderness becomes domination. Wholeness requires both. This is why the people who appear strongest are not always integrated. Sometimes they have simply exiled vulnerability. And the people who appear kindest are not always peaceful. Sometimes they have simply exiled anger. The shadow always collects whatever consciousness refuses to carry. Perhaps you've noticed something curious. The more intensely someone advertises one quality, the more likely its opposite hides beneath the surface. Someone obsessed with appearing confident may secretly fear inadequacy. Someone obsessed with appearing spiritual may secretly fear their own humanity. Someone obsessed with appearing generous may secretly resent everyone around them. The unconscious compensates. Balance is always trying to restore itself. So what happens when you finally stop resisting? Something remarkable. The energy spent suppressing yourself returns. Imagine carrying an enormous backpack every single day without realizing it. Then one afternoon someone quietly removes it. The world has not changed, but your body suddenly feels lighter. Ideas arrive faster. Your breathing deepens. Your intuition becomes clearer. You stop rehearsing every conversation before it happens. You stop replaying every mistake after it ends. Because there is no longer a civil war inside your own mind. Many people spend years trying to increase motivation. But perhaps motivation is not missing. Perhaps it has been imprisoned beneath self-rejection. Energy trapped beneath shame cannot become creativity. It cannot become leadership. It cannot become love. First, it must become accepted. Acceptance is not agreement. Acceptance is awareness. You cannot transform what you refuse to acknowledge. Suppose someone handed you a room filled with priceless treasure, but the lights were turned off. Would you conclude the room was empty, or would you search for the switch? Shadow work is not creating treasure. It is turning on the light. Then you begin recognizing astonishing things. The competitiveness you hated becomes disciplined ambition. The sensitivity you feared becomes profound empathy. The stubbornness you apologized for becomes unwavering commitment. The intensity you tried to suppress becomes passion capable of changing lives. Nothing essential is added. Everything essential is reclaimed. This is why transformation often feels less like becoming someone else and more like remembering someone ancient. There is another paradox. The qualities you fear expressing consciously often erupt unconsciously. The person who never allows themselves healthy anger suddenly explodes over something trivial. The person who never admits loneliness clings desperately to unhealthy relationships. The person who denies ambition quietly resents everyone who succeeds. What consciousness rejects, the unconscious performs. That is why awareness is freedom. Without awareness, you do not choose your behavior. Your forgotten history chooses it for you. Notice how different this perspective feels. Instead of asking, "What is wrong with me?" you begin asking, "What part of me has been waiting to be heard?" One question creates shame, the other creates curiosity. Curiosity heals what judgment never could. Imagine speaking to your younger self. Not to correct them, not to criticize them, simply to understand. Imagine saying, "I know why you became quiet. I know why you stopped trusting. I know why you learned to hide. You were trying to survive." Feel the difference. Survival deserves compassion, but survival cannot become your permanent identity, because the strategies that protected the child can imprison the adult. The child needed approval. The adult needs authenticity. The child feared exclusion. The adult fears meaninglessness. The child adapted. The adult must choose. And every meaningful life is built upon that choice, to remain accepted or become real. Reality carries a price. Some people will misunderstand you. Others will prefer the smaller version of you because it made them comfortable. Some relationships may end. Some identities will certainly die. But notice what appears in the space they leave behind. Breathing room, clarity, vitality, life. Not the performance of life, life itself. There is something profoundly unsettling about becoming authentic. You lose the ability to blame the world for the prison whose keys are already in your hands. Responsibility returns, and with responsibility comes power. Real power is not controlling others. It is no longer being controlled by the parts of yourself you refuse to see. Imagine waking tomorrow without needing to prove your worth. Imagine entering a room without calculating how everyone perceives you. Imagine saying no without guilt. Imagine saying yes without fear. Imagine feeling emotion without becoming its prisoner. Imagine trusting your instincts because you finally know where they come from. This is not fantasy. It is what begins happening when the shadow is no longer treated as an enemy. The greatest irony is this: most people spend their lives searching for purpose somewhere outside themselves. A better job, a better relationship, a better city, a better version of the future. Meanwhile, the doorway they have been searching for has quietly remained within them all along, hidden behind every rejected emotion, every forgotten dream, every uncomfortable truth, every piece of themselves they once believed had to disappear in order to deserve love. Your darkness was never asking to destroy you. It was asking to become conscious, because darkness without awareness becomes suffering. Darkness with awareness becomes wisdom. The world does not need more perfect people. It needs people who have faced themselves deeply enough that they no longer need to wear masks. People who can feel anger without becoming cruel, power without becoming oppressive, love without losing themselves, sensitivity without shame, ambition without emptiness. People who have stopped fighting their own humanity. Perhaps that journey begins tonight, not with a dramatic decision, not with a perfect plan, but with one honest question asked in complete silence. Which part of myself have I spent my entire life trying to erase? That may actually be the very part capable of setting me free. Stay with that question. Do not rush to answer it. Allow it to echo through your thoughts over the coming days. Because sometimes the most powerful transformation does not begin with finding an answer. It begins with finally asking the question your shadow has been waiting your entire life to hear.